maybe you have walked a similar path, but Greg had an idea that he would try to demonstrate how much he loved his wife. And so for about 3 months, he made a habit every day after work. He'd work, and then he would go to the local grocery store, buy something unique every day, walk home, and say, hey, babe, I got this for you. I love you. Every day for 3 months. You might imagine the surprise after 3 months when his wife said to him, Greg, I just feel like you don't love me. And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't love you. Like, for 3 months, I've bought a gift for you. Like, for 3 months, every day. I went to work. I thought about you. I bought something for you. I brought it home. I said, I love you. Like, how do you mean I don't love you? Anybody ever kind of did something like this before? Where you're trying to communicate to somebody that you love them, that you're trying to communicate to somebody that you care for them. And so whether you are married or you are single or you're divorced or widowed, like the fact that there's this God-given need for all of us to feel love. Like, we all need to feel love, everybody, right? Like, there's just something there. And so, but why is it sometimes, like, if I speak one thing, like, you're just not getting it, but something else you seem to get. So, like, there's this thing called love languages that was spoken about. I think it was Gary Chapman a few years ago talked about love languages. And in essence, he said that, hey, like, there's certain languages that we really speak really well that communicate, I love you. And this is a little different than like 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13 says that love is an action, so it's a verb, right? So love is patient, it is kind, it's not arrogant, it's not rude, it doesn't insist on having its own way. And so we know that in that context, love, like we show love. So it isn't how I feel, but so I love somebody, and so I act out lovingly towards them when I'm patient and kind and not rude and not self-serving. And so we understand that, but there's another dimension of love that's more of a feeling type deal. As a matter of fact, did you realize in the Greek, there's 3 different words for love? And so, like, English is one. It's like this encompasses everything. But in the Greek, there's like a romantic love, a friend love, and then what we call like a serving love. And so what does that look like for us? There's several studies really that have talked about how, not just Gary Chapman's book, but different books have talked about love and respect is another one, that talked about there's certain things that just help us to feel like it's our language of love, if you will. And so Gary Chapman came up with these 5 languages, and we're going to talk about that today and with some of the other staff members. Let me just basically share what some of them are. So the first one is words of affirmation. Words of affirmation is stuff like, hey, you look really great, or great job preaching. Yeah, so great job, yeah. So, so great job preaching, great job communicating, or if you're a dad, like if someone says to you, man, you're being a great dad, or you're being a great mom, or man, you're a great worker. So like words of affirmation are words that are encouraging you, edifying you, man, they're just telling you that, they're not lying to you, right? But they're just affirming you and saying that I really appreciate you. I'm curious, how many people here would say, yeah, one of your languages that really affirms love to you is when people affirm you, like that language of affirmation? How many would say, yes, that's me? Like, just build me up, tell me I'm great. That's not a bad thing. So, yeah, so curious, okay. Another one is the language of gifts. And this isn't like a selfish deal. So you're not saying, just give me more stuff. It's not what it means. It just means that you love the fact that when someone goes out somewhere and they go shopping, they think about you. And so, like, they give you a gift. That just means something to you. Or you might communicate that way by, like, you've set up this idea, like Valentine's Day is today, by the way. So some of you have been actually thinking about this day for a long time. And you'd be like, I got this really sweet gift, and I can't wait to give it. Like, that might be your language is gifts. It just has a lot of meaning to you. And your spouse might be like, okay, thanks, here's what I got you. Picked it up this morning. Different love language maybe, but how many would say, the idea of getting gifts or giving gifts might be your language? How many would say yes, language, yeah, gifts, okay? Quality time, if that's your primary language, you're like, hey, can we just hang out? Can we just do something together? like not necessarily watch TV, but can we go for a walk together? Can we, no distractions? I mean, maybe throw a football outside if you're a single person, like a youth, like maybe your youth might be like, quality time might be, let's just throw a football outside or play basketball. But how many would say maybe one of your love languages that's high up is the idea of quality time? How many, like, that's you? Yes. So quality time, I just want to hang out with you one-on-one. Okay. Let me give you, so a few years back, I was with some friends of mine, and we were in, I think it was Appleton, and we were at this table, pastor's table, and we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden this guy that comes in, and he sits down next to me, and I'm sitting there, and like, the table's like, you can't see what's under the table, right? And all of a sudden, this hand touches my knee. And it starts rubbing my knee. Can you see this? Thank you. And my knee's getting rubbed. And it's like massage. I'm like, holy cow. And so, like, he was all laughing, and he's having a good, like, he's very well respected. And then, like, I wait for, like, 2 minutes. And finally I say, dude, stop touching my leg. Stop it. So, how many might think that maybe, like, physical touch might be a love language for that guy? And for Pastor Whalen. Pastor Whalen, like, I think if he was here, Pastor, I think he would be like, a little bit closer right there. There you go. He would be rubbing it back and stuff, and that would just be sickening. And it just makes me want to throw up. When you just did that, it made me just creep, like, oh, so bad. Just got to see my wife. Don't touch me. Oh, it's you. I thought someone else did the same thing. So physical touch, and this isn't sexual necessarily. So physical touch is like you just, like you like someone tapping in the back, maybe a little, neck massage or whatever. Like how many that might be your love language? You just, like, you're kind of a touchy person. How many, like some of you are like, there's no small space, like there's no space. You don't understand the concept of space. Like you just, here you are, there you are. And you just walk, it's like a dance. How many again? So stay away from all of you. So, and then the last one I want to talk about, and again, I think there's more, but this is, Gary Chapman's book, and it's kind of what we're going to highlight today. The last one is the idea of service, and it's that people do something for me. And it makes a huge love statement. And so it might be something like, hey, honey, would you just fill my gas tank in the wintertime? Would you just serve me that way? That would be awesome. That means you love me. Like, I love that you buy me stuff. I love that you touch my leg or whatever. But if you just fill my gas tank, woo, it goes way up, right? Or if you can you just wash the dishes or vacuum? Can you serve some way? Can you help me serve? And so some people, like, that really communicates that you love me. Like, that just means everything to them. So how many of you, like, that's your, like, one of your languages maybe? Yeah, so serve. Okay, that's interesting. So my wife, her hands was raised in every single one, and so this is the world that I live in. And so what this means, it's really easy to love her. No matter what I do, she's like, yep, he loves me. That's what it means. Or it means I can never get it right. I don't know. I'll let her defend that in a moment. So, but love languages, again, are not just for married people. Sometimes we misunderstand that and think that it's only if you're married, but love languages are children have languages, single people in a working environment, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. It's so unique to see the different languages of love and how you can express love to one another in a work environment. But me to say what it's not about. When you figure out love languages, it's not saying, hey, here's my love language, so do this for me. Like, everyone's going to go home, take a test, and say, my love language is gifts. Hey, babe, like, here's my language, gifts. So buy me a gift every day, and that will tell me you love me. Like, that's not what it's for. You want to learn love language, really, I think, for 2 reasons. The first one is that you can invest into others in a way that communicates love to them, right? So you want to know love language, especially if you're married or if you're a parent who's got kids. Like, how does my child receive love? I want to know that so that I can try to invest in a way that they understand it. So all of our family took the tests, Journey and Strider, I don't remember. I think one is quality time, and I think one was affirmation or something of that nature. But some are really close, but that's why you want to learn them. So, and then number 2, you also want to learn love languages because it's really a pathway to grace. So someone like Gary in the beginning of the story might try to tell you that, you're trying to say you love me or whatever, but how do I say this? Sometimes understanding love languages helps you to see into someone else's world. So you might be feeling like, I don't really feel like they appreciate me, I don't really feel like they love me, but if you just listen to their language, and they've been serving you every day, or they've been buying you gifts every day, sometimes just understanding their language helps you to appreciate who they are and that they do love you and they're trying to communicate it in the language that they understand. Does that make sense? So we're going to share, 4 of us are just going to share a little bit back and forth about what that looks like in our context. So I'm going to ask Pastor Monica and Pastor Waylon and Pastor Jennifer and Pastor Scott and Angie if you guys would come on up and we'll just have a little chat, if you would. Did you give them a hand? Aren't they great people? Would you do that? Did you happen to get the microphone when you did? Awesome. Isn't she amazing?
Microphone.
She got the microphone.
Good job.
Yes. Her hair got cut. Doesn't it look great? You guys know she cut her hair? So yeah.
Okay.
Apparently affirmation.
Embarrassing is not my love language.
Affirmation may not be your love language. Yeah, I don't know. So Monica, maybe you can share with us. We talked a lot about how God, how does God communicate love? How can we communicate love to Him? What does that look like in that world? If you could talk about that.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about that. I mean, we all want to develop our relationship with each other. We want to feel love. We want to give love. We want to love people properly. But when we look at 1 John 4:8, and it says, anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. And so it automatically tells us to even understand love, we have to know God and know about His love. And God created each one of us uniquely, and He wants a personal relationship, all of our own with us, that can't be compared to anyone else's relationship with God, which is awesome, because sometimes you just think we're all Christians, we're all loving God the same way, and God's loving us the same way. But that's not true. He wants a special relationship with each one of us that's so unique. And I just think that's amazing. The creator of the universe wants that. So if we look at the 5 love language and maybe start to ask yourself, how does God show love to me? Or how do I feel that God is loving me? How do I show God that I love Him? What does that look like? And then another verse that I was thinking about was, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love others as yourself. So if we think about that, we can see that we all have basically the same command, but we're going to express it differently to each other and express it differently to God. One way we might think of this is sometimes there's people that come to church and they're just like, oh, I love that we sang for 30 minutes or whatever. It was just the best time. And they're telling someone this, and the other person's like, oh my God, I didn't think it was ever going to end. I was just... And just because that's not their way...
He doesn't believe it. He's like, it's not true.
It's just because their love language isn't that. They're expressing God differently. Or someone that, they love to pray by themselves, but other people are like, oh, I just love when we get together. We need both. We need all of it. But it's just the way we receive or give love to God that looks different and feels different. So when we look about how God is speaking to us, how He's loving us, we can look at His love and understand better. So God's love is steady, it's grounded, it's sacrificial, and it's active. His love is agape love, and He doesn't want anything in return. He just wants to love on us. And so that is the way He wants to love on us and meet our needs. So trying to figure these out, I was kind of thinking about, for me, I really connect with God when I'm in nature. Because I was thinking about, I love sunsets and sunrises and walking in nature and just spending time with God that way. That's kind of one way that I connect with God. And so I feel God that way. So maybe try some things out. Maybe memorizing scripture is your really your key close with God, or just focusing on one Bible passage, and others it's like reading the whole Bible in a year. And ask yourself, how does my heart respond to this? How does my heart respond to these truths that I'm spending time with God? And one thing that I think is very important is that ask God to fill you with his love, but also realizing that anytime we come to God, anytime, whatever action we're doing, he's always going to be faithful to show up and to meet our needs. He's always going to see that as an action. So we don't have to have a right way or a wrong way. It's just he's always going to be faithful. And so I guess the main point would be, first we have to be filled with God's love before we're ever going to be able to love others.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's good. I was thinking too, sometimes I think we communicate, like as you're talking, the second service, like we communicate to God often through these languages as well. So like a lot of us are really servant people, right? And we're like, I gotta serve. I just think it's interesting, in that perspective, how, if you think about it, we often do communicate even our relationship to God through these languages. And the fact that God is perfect, and he can communicate all of these 100% of the time to all of us is nothing less than amazing. So that's awesome. Hey, so Pastor Whalen, what are some things that maybe love languages are not?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on it you touched on it already, but I think there's something important we need to understand with love languages. And so the best example I can think about it is in the context of marriage. So in a healthy marriage, there is a kind of a cycle that happens. So my wife loves me, which inspires me to love my wife, which inspires her to love me, which inspires me to love her, and on and on and on and on and on forever. And that's a healthy cycle in a healthy marriage. But I think you kind of touched on it already with the love languages. There can be a misunderstanding or misconception about like, okay, I have a love tank that needs to be filled in order for me to feel emotionally validated or to be able to run through life effectively. I need to have a full love tank. And so there's this thing where I demand, I need you to fill my love tank, and you have to fill my love tank through service. You need to do the dishes for me. You have to touch me. You have to give me a gift every single week. So there's can be this unhealthy demand of like, well, you should be loving me in this way. You should be filling my love tank up. And then there's also on the other side, the flip side of it, there's also the thing about like, oh my gosh, their love tank isn't full. I've got to fill them up, and like I'm failing as a spouse or as a friend or whatever, and I'm like, I got to give them a gift, or I got to give them a hug, or I got to do something for them because I got to fill their love tank up. And that actually becomes a very unhealthy cycle, because the fact of the matter is, the reality is that no human on the face of the earth is going to be able to consistently and effectively fill your love tank up for the rest of their life. It's impossible. It will never happen. No one you meet will be able to do it. They will either A, burn themselves out, or B, disappoint you consistently. And so there's only one person, there's only one being that's going to be able to fill you up consistently, and that's Jesus. And so in John 4, Jesus is with the Samaritan woman at the well, and he's sitting there, and he tells her that whoever drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst again. He's saying that I'm going to be the only thing that will truly satisfy you. And so Jesus is the only one that will actually truly satisfy and fill your love tank up consistently every single day for the rest of your life. Yeah. No other human's going to be able to do that. And the really, really, really cool thing that happens when this happens is that it comes back to that word I said at the very beginning, that key word, which was inspire. So and this is something I've just been learning in the last couple of years of my marriage. I'm the marriage rookie here upstairs on this stage. Everyone else has
He's got all the answers. He's been married for 2 years. Let me just tell you how it goes.
I got 3 years. They got like double digits or triple digits. But no, I'm kidding.
We don't have triple digits.
I'm kidding. But so just been learning it in the last couple of years that like when both parties on the equation are satisfied in God, so God's taking care of my love tank, and then I know God's going to be taking care of my wife's love tank, it allows me to actually be able to freely love in a way that is truly designed. So instead of me having to measure up or me have to make sure I check all the check marks or make sure that the love tank stays full. It removes that responsibility and that burden off of me, and now I am able to be loved as I am inspired. And when I love as I'm inspired, it inspires love back towards me. And so it creates this healthy cycle, and that's so important because in the context of marriage, you will never truly be healthy, and you will never truly, love will never truly blossom into what God designed it to be unless both parties are grounded in God and allowing Him to fill them up daily. And now the same principle is it's the same if you're single, because it's the same way. So you can just switch out the significant other, the spouse, for a mentor, for a friend, for a sports team, for a workplace. Just because you're not in marriage doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. You're never going to be able to truly show love to the people around you unless God has fully filled your love tank and you're being satisfied in Him. And you, in turn, just bring yourself out. There's a really cool quote. I don't know who said this quote that I think of when I'm thinking about this, and it was kind of like a light bulb moment for me when I heard it. But it says, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm," and you can't do that. And so you have to let God be the one to fill you up, so you don't in turn set yourself on fire to keep other people warm.
Yeah, that's really a great statement. So, Pastor Jennifer, you're kind of the love language expert on our staff.
Ooh,
You just did a
didn't
whole
know.
whole series, right?
Yes.
And what's it called again? It's
Parenting Essentials.
so Pastor Jennifer's been doing a thing called Parenting Essentials since COVID, sometime around COVID. How many guys have been listening to Parenting Essentials? Raise a hand real high, proudly. Yeah. So.
A few of you.
Okay, so if you have not been listening to it, it is so helpful. She's going through love languages for kids. You can go to YouTube. Was it New Life Escanaba's YouTube page? Yeah. And you'll find them, and there's some in order that she's been walking through that. And so all of us have said love language is not just about marriage. It's about every relationship. And so would you highlight for us maybe again what it looks like for a child? Can we learn a love language for a child?
You can learn a love language for a child. It's different for children than it is for adults because children really need love. They need to feel love, unconditional love, in order to grow and develop into the full person that God intends them to be. So for our children, it's almost like we need to first be filled with love from God before we can share love to our children, because really, as a parent, it's our job to reflect God to our child. In a sense, we're the hands and feet of Jesus to our children. And as I sit here, Kids Ministries is going on, and there's so many incredible kids back there. And even if you're not a parent, and maybe you have been a parent or you're a grandparent, or maybe you serve children, I was talking to somebody after the first service and how much this applies to even serving and working with children. Knowing the way that children feel and receive love is really critical to their development. So yes, children do develop a primary love language. They really don't start to develop a primary love language till they're about 5 years old, and that's when they start to become more independent. They start to kind of have their own personalities, have their own preferences, and that's when they start to receive love in a more specific way. However, it's really important to share love with your children in all 5 love languages throughout their entire childhood. Actually, we as adults still need to be loved in all 5 love languages.
Yeah,
it's just
yes,
that
yeah.
we do have a primary one that we perhaps accept it more. We did kind of propose the fact that maybe when you take the quiz, the primary love language you have at the time might be the one that's not getting fulfilled as much.
Yeah.
That was something we kind of looked at, but
I'm in a lot of trouble if that's the case then.
yeah,
Because if hers is all 5, that means
forget
I'm
I
doing
said
terrible.
that. I'm gonna be in trouble. All right, so yeah. But it is really important that we do learn our children's love languages so that we can love them in a way that they can receive and feel that love. Because oftentimes as parents, if you ask any parent if you love your child, they're going to say, well, yeah, of course I love my child. We love our children. But as our children grow and, like I said, become more independent and have their own preferences, they'll receive that love in different ways. So perhaps if your child is you're starting to notice some struggles when your child's in elementary school, maybe they're starting to struggle in school or struggle in relationships, or you're noticing that they're acting out at home. It could be that maybe their love language, their love tank is depleting because you're not speaking to them in a way that they feel it. Even though, like the story with Gary, you're loving your children in the way that you express love, maybe they're not feeling it. So like if your child's love language could possibly be quality time and you've just been so busy with everything, the busyness of whatever you're doing, bringing kids to music or sports, whatever it happens to be, you're working, and you realize, hey, I haven't really been spending that one-on-one quality time with my child. And perhaps that's the reason that they're starting to act out. Because a child whose love tank starts to deplete, they're not as ready and as able to be disciplined. They aren't feeling as safe and secure as they would be if their love tank was full. So knowing your child's love language really helps foster their proper growth and development and potential. The other one that I was thinking about sharing was if your child's love language is words of affirmation. So another reason to know your child's primary love language is because if you, well, we kind of talked about the love busters, right? So if
we did the first dose. We didn't do this one yet, but yeah.
Right. So if your child's primary love language is words of affirmation, so when you say to them, hey, I see you really worked hard on that project. Wow, I noticed that you put in a lot of extra time. You did a great job. You know, words of affirmation with kids needs to be specific, authentic, because kids will see right through if you just keep saying great job, great job, great job. But when you're specific with them and you give them, specific encouragement, it's going to build them up. But on the other side of that, the opposite is also true. So if your child's primary love language is words of encouragement and you tell them, hey, I can see you were lazy, you should have put more time in, those kind of remarks can be really particularly damaging to a child whose primary love language is words of affirmation, more so than a child whose love language or primary love language maybe isn't that. So knowing your child's primary love language not only helps you to build them up, it also helps you to kind of take check and note of what you shouldn't be saying to that child specifically. So
that's so good too, because I even thought about like how we sometimes discipline. So how you discipline one child should be different maybe than another one.
Absolutely.
So, like time out for one kid to be like, I don't care.
Right.
But the other kid could be the worst thing ever if they're like quality time, right? Affection people.
That example isn't in this book, and
I didn't even write it.
This is like
wow.
This is like the best book I believe that anybody who has children or works with children could really read because children need a foundation of unconditional love in order to grow and develop into the strong, generous, loving, kind people that we want them to grow into. And it's just really incredible how it's really easy to think we're loving our children. And when they're little, when they're babies, toddlers, preschoolers, we're just showering them with all 5 love languages constantly because that's the nature of parenting that age group. But as the children get older, sometimes we overlook something and we realize that helping your child clean their bedroom might show love to them way more than hugs and kisses before school if their love language is acts of service. And it's so easy to overlook that because, hugs and kisses are so easy to give until they hit maybe age, I don't know, Strider, 14?
5.
Before it starts to get awkward for
6.
boys. So, yeah. So
2.
knowing that, whoa, we're going way back.
No, that's what he said.
2? Oh, boy. So we need to know how to love our teenagers. So that's another important piece.
Come on, bring it in.
We got to be able to love those teens in the language that they get it. But they still need all 5.
Hey, so that book is available, that one for children, and then there's one for teens that's available, and then one for marriages that's available, but they're all good concepts, and so they're out at the foyer on your way out. Also, if I didn't say this yet, we have fudge for everybody.
Fudge hearts.
Fudge, so yeah. So you gift people, you guys should be shouting, like, yay. And if you touch people, Pastor Whalen will be there handing it out for you, giving you a pat on the back, But hey, so Pastor Scott and Angie, they are like the professional marriage people in our staff. They have it all together, and so they're leading the way and how we do things. And so I thought maybe they could share with us maybe some insight, maybe some lessons you guys have learned on, what does it look like in a love language in a marriage?
The qualifications for that level must be very low. That's all I'm saying. I absolutely love the whole 5 love languages, and it was decades ago, that somebody went through it. I don't remember who it was here, maybe in a Sunday school class at the time or something. And so I remember reading the book and taking the test, and it was very eye-opening. But something that I wanted to emphasize, is that in relationships, there obviously is stages and seasons. And so as it relates to the 5 love languages, this stuff is probably really easy and just natural to do during the honeymoon phase.
Right.
And but if you've been together for any amount of time, you know that the honeymoon phase doesn't last forever.
It does.
It does. So I don't know. See, we're not as good as you thought that we were. But one of the things that I think I have come to recognize, and just because I recognize it doesn't mean I'm an expert at it or that I'm even good at it, but I think one of the absolute biggest things in any relationship is communication. Yeah. And I think you could be going through this. We've talked about like recognizing what those, how someone receives love, and we can be putting all of our time and energy to like show that and to fill that up. But that's only one aspect of a relationship. And if we spend all of our time doing that, man, our relationship is definitely not going to thrive, and you may run into some problems with your relationship even surviving, and that's because you can't just do things to keep it together. There's so much more, and I think that communication is just key. And because as the different seasons of life happen, even though you might receive love and you might give love certain ways, you still have to be on the same page. Like, it doesn't mean that you necessarily agree, obviously, 100% of the time, but that there's just good old-fashioned communication, because you might reach a point where all of a sudden there's issues in your relationship, or you're going through something, and you're thinking in your mind, well, I've been showing her love the way that she receives love, then how come we're having these problems? Right. Yeah. And so that's, I think, a big part for me. And then the second part of it is, when it comes to showing love, like, it has to be without condition. Pastor Monica, you talked about this, about how God has called us to love and how Jesus modeled for us to love, and it's a sacrificial, unconditional, it's a serving type of love. And so it can't be with the prerequisite in our mind that, man, I feel like I'm going to fill up their love tank because I want to get something back. Yep. And so if we have that intention and we approach it like that, we're never going to be satisfied. And like you said, we're going to burn ourselves out trying to meet the other person, and it's going to, we see it in counseling all the time, 50-50, 100%, and like I'm doing this, but they're not doing that. And it's you have to begin to serve one another, as Christ said, in brotherly love, not thinking of yourself higher than you ought to, and treating others as you would treat yourself. And I just think that is key. So our love languages, I'll pass the microphone to Ange, but I'm definitely a acts of service, followed by a close words of affirmation.
You're a great guy.
Thank you.
You are.
And Angie is definitely a quality of time, but I'll pass it over to her at this point.
All right. Yes, so I think, excuse me, throughout almost 19 years of marriage have kind of, I don't remember reading the book or taking the test, but we knew about it, what the love languages are, and kind of figured out what he is and what I am. But then when we took the test, it really kind of confirmed. It shows percentages and everything. And what we found out is that my top 2 love languages are his bottom 2, and his top 2 love languages are my bottom 2. So we're like this, we are right in sync. So we have been, like I said, married for almost 19 years. And throughout this time, I think we really do try, like all of us do. We try to love each other, and we're giving it our everything. We are just every day just loving each other and doing all the things.
I'm just loving you. Go on.
We're doing it. Right? Father's Day comes up, and me and the kids are like writing stories and poems, and we're writing plays, and we're performing them for him, and we're doing scavenger hunts and making books. These are all real things, And we're like, man, Father's Day is going to come. We're going to give him this gift, because that's one of my top love languages, and he's going to love it. And he does. He opens them, and he's so happy. But the thing is, now I know, like, gifts is 6% for him. So even if it was like something that he would really use, it's not really going to fill his tank, right? But I'm trying. And so Scott might come home from work and his is words of affirmation, one of his, and he might be like, "Hey, Ange, you look nice today," or "Good job today," or, you know, "Nice pants," and I'm like, Are you being mean to me? Like, are you being sarcastic right now? Because, like, I wore these pants 3 days in a row. You didn't say anything 3 days ago. You know, what's so great about today? Is it the spaghetti? Is it what's the deal? So he's trying. We're both trying, but the problem is we're speaking these two different languages, like very literally when it comes to love. So I'm going to talk about how communication in our marriage has played into this. A lot of times, when we talked about filling our love tank, how, you know, God needs to be the one to do that. And that is true, 100%. There is not a single person, no matter how amazing they are, who will ever fill your love tank. And as a Christian, I know this, so there will be times where I might be struggling with feeling loved in a certain way, and I'm like battling it out with God. And I'm like, God, you're the one who needs to fill me. And I'm taking it to God, and we're really trying to get through this, just me and God. And Scott has kind of helped me out and been like, "Hey, Ange, that's great, but I'm your husband, so you need to talk to me." So I think it's extremely important that when you're married, it sounds really selfish, but to share with your spouse, "Hey, I am feeling this right now. I'm feeling like my love tank is low. I am empty." And then help them out and be specific and be like, "If you would do this for me, that would really help me to not feel this way." And they're not gonna do awesome necessarily, right? Your marriage is not all of a sudden gonna be perfect. They're not gonna always remember to do those things. But the point of telling them is not necessarily so that all of a sudden they're loving you perfectly. It's actually for them. It's actually for each other. Yeah. Like, it says, Proverbs 27:17, it says that as iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens another. Yeah. So you're giving them, your spouse, the opportunity to grow in the way they show love, to grow in the way that they react when you share with them, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling, this would help me." And then that is not going to only translate into how they can love you, but how they can really love in the body of Christ, how they can minister to people, and even how they can love God, because you're helping them to grow in their faith. So,
yes, that was great. Hey. So I just summary, and then we'll go. I do think everyone said the same thing type of deal, that, like, so love language is not, it's not a honey-do list. That's not love. So love is not just do, but love is that act of serving. And I think it's so important that we just clarify that it's not a do list. So it's not I do. It's just practical ways of how to demonstrate you care for somebody through some things that really communicate to them out of a desire to want to communicate. If you turn it into just a do list, it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's across the board, whether it's with a spouse or with a child or with a friend or with a coworker, wherever it is. I love the fact that we know each other's love languages in the office. We hang out quite a bit, and so it's very helpful within our office context to kind of know. Pastor Scott's like every Sunday. This is be Wayland. No, every Sunday. Like almost every Sunday, Pastor Scott will say, "Hey, great job, Pastor." And I'll be like, "I didn't do anything today." So like, what do you, great job, thank you. And so, so it's so interesting, like Pastor Jennifer will often buy Snickers candy bars. I'm like, yes! That communicates. So like, they all have different, Pastor Wayne's like, "Hey, can we just hang out a little bit?" Whatever. But I think it's helpful to learn it. So the website, you can Google love languages, and it'll get you some tests for the kids as well. And then there's an app, Monica. What's the app called again? Love Nudge, just like fudge, but it's Love Nudge. And if you're married, you can both get the app, take the test, and you can kind of help track each other. But again, I have to say it again, like it's not your job to fill your spouse's love tank. That's really God's job. Your job of your spouse is to love you, and they're just trying to communicate in a way that you understand. That's important. So, hey, don't forget to get fudge on your way out. Yeah, I'm going to ask the ushers, if you guys remain seated where you are. Ushers, if you guys would start dismissing from the back row. And if you're handing out fudge, could you leave first to make sure that everyone gets fudge? That's so important. That's like what Jesus would do. He would like hand out fudge. I know he would. So ushers, if you would start dismissing from the back row first, and if you guys would remain seated. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for everything.